I was like snorting Jack Daniels, and that was 21, 22, 2023. Everything just got crazy. That was my worst year drinking. I was doing crazy shit. It became not how like how to get drunk, but how like crazy can we get? It's a high factor, and the crazier stuff got crazier. I was suffering more and more, but I was doing it for the wrong reasons too. It wasn't like, oh, let's go, it'll be fun. It was like, no, I need to escape somewhere. I need to escape. From the moment I started drinking, alcohol provided a way to take out the noise, because I have, ADHD and OCD and anxiety. And when I drank, just kind of simmered all out. Everything was cool and I could be at peace. I liked that feeling. I liked being kind of drunk and not having to deal with all the stuff in my head. But when it started to become a problem was...
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for considering donating to my podcast. When I started this page just a few months ago, I did not think I would get to this place that I'm at right now, but I cannot thank you all enough for even considering to donate to my cause. A lot of work goes into these things, whether that be getting guests, getting the expensive equipment, the editing. Oh my God, the editing takes me forever and I'm terrible at it. So it takes me even longer. But if you're here, thank you. Whatever you can afford, I would so appreciate it. It would mean the world to me. So if you want to hear these recovery stories, keep coming, then please consider donating. It would mean just the absolute the world to me. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And thank you for being a part of my journey. I really don't know what else to say besides thank you. And be on the lookout for many, many more episodes coming soon. Thank you, everybody.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Willpower Podcast. It's been a little while, and I'm so excited that my first guest here is actually a friend of mine. We've been in contact since I basically started my channel, which is really, really neat. So his name is Mario. He's 25, I believe now, right?
Yeah, 25.
Yeah, so he's on the younger side, which is like kind of the angle that I really wanted to go with this next season of the podcast. Is I want to get back to the roots of like each different area of sobriety, and especially with the people who are changing at a younger age, which is a really cool thing to see. So Mario had the opportunity to understand this at a younger age, right? Whereas I, on the other end, had to learn this tragic story much later. So first and foremost, hey Mario, how are you doing today, buddy?
Hey,
Thank you
well,
so
it's
much for
good to
coming
be
on the
here.
Willpower Podcast.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited to be on here, man.
Yeah, I mean, I know this one took a while for us to finally link up, but here we are. It took us a few tries for this one to work. So, we're really happy that it finally worked out. So Mario, let's just talk about, quickly, who are you, where you're from, and what's your story?
So I am Mario, and I am from Babylon Village, New York, Long Island. 25, and I got sober at 24 after 8 hard years of drinking and debauchery. I hit my rock bottom, and I haven't picked up a drink since. It was crazy, because, like 1 minute you're at a high school party and drinking some beer and you thinking this is all fun. And then a couple years later, you're polishing off a fifth of Jack Daniels on your own. And it's like, how did I get here? Um,
Yeah, it creeps up quick on you,
yeah,
doesn't it? Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So let's back up a little bit. So when did you start to? So you were basically living a normal life, right? Like a normal high school life. And then when did all of a sudden the alcohol start to kind of take a little too much space in your life?
So from the moment I started drinking, alcohol provided a way to take out the noise, because I have, ADHD and OCD and anxiety, and there's a lot of noise up there. And when I drank, it just kind of simmered all out, and everything was cool and I could be at peace. Um, and I liked that feeling. I liked just being kind of drunk and not having to deal with all the stuff in my head. Um, Bullying was another factor that got canceled out when I drank, and it was more socially acceptable. So, people who would make fun of you. We're like, oh, Mario's got a beer. Maybe he's not sober. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, but when it started to become a problem was, I would say, sometime in college. But it's hard to recognize it in college because the stigma and what you're supposed to do in college is, oh, party, go crazy, be wild. So it's almost like you could drink as much as you want, but it's like, oh, he's in college, it's fine. That's what they do, which is ridiculous because I was, passing out on the couch with bottles of scotch in my hand, and like on a Tuesday.
Mhm.
Like, that's not normal. That's not
Yeah.
okay, you
Right.
know?
Well, I'm with you on that one, man. I mean, my college days are fueled with every moment was basically alcohol related, and I'm from the generation that's a little older than yours, and it was all about drinking all the time. Like passing out on couches with like food being thrown on top of you was like
Yeah.
the norm, man. That was the
Yeah.
norm, and we'd have a big laugh about it. But yeah, like, if it's at your expense, like it's not really funny. Like you're laughing along, but you're like super embarrassed and ashamed that deep down, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And, like your friends and everybody laughs, but you're the one who's going through the hangover the next day. You're the one who's got the depression, the anxiety the next day. And it's like, is the juice worth the squeeze on this? And
Hmm.
um no, but it was so college, I was going through a bad breakup senior year, and that's where things I think really took a turn. Because then I
Hmm.
started to rely on alcohol to get me through the day, like situations. Um it was close proximity, so I'd see her all the time. And there was a lot of mental games, and alcohol was a perfect vice. So at the end of the year, my buddies and I, we in our apartment, we had all the bottles that we killed on top the kitchen cabinets. We counted them, and that is 80 something. This is over 3 semesters because we had COVID. At 80 something, like 56 were mine. So yeah, and it was whiskey, vodka, just like hard stuff. I was never a huge beer drinker, because it bloated me and I felt like I couldn't drink more. The liquor was just a
Same.
straight shooter.
Yeah, I was the same. I was the same. I probably ditched beer like I don't know after high school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was the same way. I was like, it's filling, it's making me bloated. I'm gaining crazy weight. All those empty calories, whereas the shot was just like quick, efficient, right?
It almost tricks your brain. It's like, oh, I'm being healthier by not
I
drinking
know, I
beer,
know.
you
Like, oh
know?
yeah, well, you hear that bullshit like all the
Yeah.
time when, well, I'm not drinking beer because it's loaded with calories. Where you're still drinking alcohol, and like it's still like
Yeah.
gonna mess you up faster and quicker and get into your bloodstream way faster
Exactly.
than just drinking like a beer or just nursing a couple of beers in the afternoon or whatever. So okay, so you had a bad breakup,
Yeah.
and that's when you really kind of started hitting it hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's when everything changed. You know, my childhood and everything, I was always I felt like I needed to be accepted almost. I mean, I was myself in certain situations, but, um, I love this girl and everything. So it was a combination of a lot of locked up traumas that I had on top of my love for her. That ended, and that was just kind of went to a tailspin. And, um, but I still graduated, got good grades, and then being at home was different, because it was like, okay, now I have to tone it back because my parents aren't going to let me get hammered on Wednesday night. I have to be secretive about it. So, weekends became like binging. I was just pre-gaming, and that was 21, 22, 2023. Everything just got crazy. That was my worst year drinking. I was doing crazy shit. It it was like it became not how like how to get drunk, but how like crazy can we get. So I was like snorting Jack Daniels, and yeah, just like when you can just drink it. But it was like I would snort Jack Daniels because everybody would be like, "Oh wow, that's crazy," you know, and it was the hype factor. And I was smoking cigarettes, and like I'd put one up to my nose and blow it out of my mouth, just like almost like a.
Now, were you doing these things beforehand, or is it just all of a sudden you're just acting out in a way that's not necessarily in line with your who you've been your whole life?
So it progressed. In college I did a lot of crazy stuff, but it wasn't like dangerous stuff. Like, in college I ran around campus in my underwear, shit like that. You know. But
I mean, that's
this
objectively funny.
yeah, exactly. So
I did
um
stuff like that too. I didn't know. I mean, when I studied abroad, we did crazy stuff like that all the time. But yeah, I mean, it's harmless if you're just doing it. But if you're like suffering inside and you're just doing these crazy things because like there's so much pent up whatever anxiety,
yeah.
insecurity. I'm just talking about myself on that, those last two, but I'm sure you can relate to it.
Yeah, and I think you said something that really kind of brought it all to fruition. It was suffering. It was
Hmm.
compounding suffering. So the crazier stuff got crazier, and I was suffering more and more. And so, to ease the suffering, things just got out of hand. I was going to strip clubs, and um it was just not me, and not but I was doing it for the wrong reasons too. It wasn't like, oh, let's go, it'll be fun. It was like, no, I need to escape somewhere. I need to
Hmm.
escape. And whether it was people saying how crazy I was or a stripper, it was all that excess of just outside attention that I didn't need to focus on myself.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean,
Now, when this
2020,
is all, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut
no,
you
you're
off, but
good.
when this is all going on, like what's going, are you, this is when you're living at home, right? Still?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what
So
are your folks saying? Are they catching on with like this different type of behavior that you're showcasing to the
we
world?
had a lot of talks. We had arguments, therapist, psychiatrist, um, and they would all say the same thing. They would say, like, you're drinking too much. You're not supposed to drink on your medication. And I would put it back on them and say, well, that's my thing. Let me handle that. You guys
Hmm.
all had your things. Why is everybody coming to me about this? It was very
Yeah.
deflective.
Deflect.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I did the
And
same. Hmm.
yeah. And, um, but I was drinking during the week, at this point, and I just, I was getting blacked out, but I would go to work hungover, but I'd be fine to do a good job. Never came to work drunk, never drove drunk. So I thought I was fine. I just drank a little bit, but I kind of created this vicious cycle for myself of Sunday would be the physical hangover, the shakes, the sweats, everything. To Monday to Wednesday or Thursday be like mental health. It would be everything I didn't want to think about, just always in my head, compounding, and it was just like torture. Um, and Thursday, I would kind of dissipate. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, if I didn't start early in the week, that would be just a vicious bender of just
So
alcohol.
you were heavily drinking Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday you would just have to sober up and go through that horrible experience of shakes and the bile. Were you bile puking and things like that too? A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And that went on for a year or two, but it was
Hmm.
every week.
Every week.
Yeah.
Now, were you going out with friends while you were doing this too, or was it just you were just doing it by yourself?
So I'll take Thursday, for example. I was a bartender at a bar in my village.
Mhm.
I would go home. I would, talk to the family. My mom was out, like usually running errands. My dad was in his office. I would go into the liquor cabinet and I would take 3 or 4 shots of vodka. And then I'm like, all right, now I got a cool buzz. I walk down to work. I never drove. I'm like, I walk down. Um, I would stop at the bar, either like another bar, take a shot, or I go to a liquor store and buy a couple nips. So now I'm like 6, 7 deep in. Now I get to the bar and I'm like feeling good. I would, serve people, but I would also have a glass. It was like a 12-ounce glass. And I fill it mostly up with vodka and then a spritz of like tonic. I have 2 or 3 of those. And then I would go out after and sometimes not remember, sometimes remember. I get on at like 12 on a Wednesday and have to wake up at
Mm-hmm.
7, 8 next day.
It's crazy how we jeopardize our health and our like our sanity for what? For pleasure? I mean, it's not even pleasure at that point. It's just like always regret.
Yeah.
This is actually a little story that I haven't actually shared with anyone on the channel, but I actually was a bartender too, right around the same age as you. So I would work as a teacher all day. This is like when I was teaching and not getting that much. I wasn't getting paid much, but I was covering for a medical leave because one of the teachers had uh, cancer, unfortunately, but she's better now. She's fine. Um, but anyways, yeah. So I would work all day, and then I would go to my bartending job, and that's when it really started to kick in, man. Like I would do the same thing you did. I would drink. Uh, so I would set up the bar, get everything clean and ready, and then I would start doing like shift drinks to all the staff. And as I was pouring the shift drinks for the staff, I would always have one. And it actually got to the point where I was drinking like this every time I went to work after work. So I was like so exhausted. I would get home at like 2 in the morning, be so, like just like you, like this. I've been drinking all night. I've been working and stuff, but I also been drinking. So it's like you're waking up. Like how are you supposed to teach when you just worked literally like 16 hours straight, and then you have a hangover now, right? So it's like you're jeopardizing your health for what, like this minor freedom of what alcohol does to us, like alleviates anxiety and stuff like that, but it just compounds, like you said earlier, compounds on top of each other that second that you wake up in the morning, and it jeopardizes your entire day.
Yeah, man.
So tell me a little bit more. So you're going through all this, now you're acting out, you're snorting things like Jack Daniels, which is, I've never even heard of that. I've heard of like the tampon thing, but
Yeah.
I've never heard of snorting it. I mean, that's crazy, man. So so are you like, are you aware that you're like you're acting out like differently? Are you noticing that this is something that's not becoming of you, and you're realizing it, or are you trying to push the envelope a little further?
I'm I'm pushing the envelope. I'm like this could be me, at the time I was like I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being the crazy party animal, and I love rock and roll music. I'm in a band myself, so I kind of enamored that whole, crazy rock and roll life. And, what you hear in the interviews of all these guys is you hear they're young and they're vibrant and everything. But then you look at the other interviews when they're old and they're like, I wish I didn't do that, or I'm in rehab and I'm sober. And some of them don't even get to say that. It, but I was getting deep into that stuff. I mean, strip clubs were a huge thing. It's a lot of money, and it was just that whole life of debauchery and decadence, and how crazy can we get? I would.
I feel like too, like growing up in Long Island too, that's a huge, that's a major significant factor in all of this as
Yeah,
well, right? Because it's just a lively place, man, right?
yeah.
So like how did growing up in Long Island kind of set the course for you as far as your alcohol abuse went? Was there any specific like things that really kind of maybe weighed one way or the other, favorably or unfavorably when it came to your
So
drinking?
Long Island is interesting because you got a lot of towns, and it's just bars and restaurants. And that's one of my towns. That is my town. You walk down the street and it's just bar, restaurant, bar, bar, bar. Growing up, it always looked like a lot of fun. Seeing all the people, and I always says it always when I was like 8 years old, I remember thinking I was at a family party and somebody had a drink with them in their hand. I was like, that looks fun. Like 8 years old, it's like life looks better with alcohol. So I always noticed it. It was always a thing on my mind.
Hmm.
Even pre puberty, it was like that looks fun.
Yeah. I've saw actually a couple of your little Facebook reels when you talk about how it was always around, like you grew up in like a family with it, right? Like similar to
Yeah.
me. Yeah, so that just makes it a little easier. I feel like a little more natural to fall into that progression of subtly realizing that alcohol actually is a huge part of everyone's life. That
Yeah.
especially when you get older, it's just like a thing you did, and that was very similar to me as well. Man, like it was just a thing that you did when you just got older and you socialized. Like that was it. Like that was like everything centered around alcohol. I almost felt like at all the gatherings, family gatherings, and things like that. So tell me about like what was the turning point? What was your rock bottom, or was there not a rock bottom?
So rock bottom. In 2021, I had a very low episode, we'll call it, and it got to the point where I was thinking about suicide. And
I'm sorry, man.
um, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, been there.
And I, yeah, I told my family though, and I was like, I need help, and we got help, and I, but I didn't stop drinking. I was like, I can't stop drinking. I'll just never get there again. But I can't give up the drink. I mean, I need that. So that's like my crutch. So this is actually, I'm glad you asked this. Fast forward to 2024, January 20th. It's my first day. A month before, I went up to my dad and I was like, I need help. I was like, I need to get help. I can't do this anymore. This is getting ridiculous. So that was December 20th. We made the call to outpatient rehab, and I just had to wait a month because my appointment was scheduled for January 20th. January 20th comes around and I'm hungover, and I was like shaking. I was so nervous because now I'm going to rehab. Now it's real. Now it's like you can't say like, oh, you don't have an issue. I'm literally in a rehab phase. Yeah. Get to rehab, and I remember telling my counselor, I was like, how do I not drink? Like never again. And she was like, just don't drink today. I was like, oh, that was just what?
It is
Um,
daunting, isn't it? When
yeah,
it's like no more for the rest of you. You're like,
yeah,
wait, like no more. And I like how she phrased it that way. Just not today, and then not
yeah,
the next day, or the next day after
yeah.
that, or the next day after that. But that's how I approach it too. It's just like I don't need to drink today. I don't need to drink tonight. And then all of a sudden, like the night's over, and then I'm like good. Like you didn't have to drink. But that's really
Oh,
cool that she said that way. So yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off. Continue on.
you good. Um, so after we left rehab, I had a date in the city that night, and I was like, fine, it's January. I can't drink. I was like, we'll figure it out. So we went to get dinner, and it was great. We had a really good time. I didn't tell her about anything that was going on because, first date, I don't want to just trauma dump. Um, but it's January in the winter. I'm like, all right, what do people do besides go to bars? And I was like, you know what? I'll go, but I'll get like a Sprite. So I went to the bar, and I was thinking, I was so nervous. I was like, if I get a Sprite, she's gonna be like, why are you drinking? She's gonna think I'm weird. It was all these things. And I went to the bartender, and I got her a rum and coke, and I paused, and I was like, I'll get a gin tonic. And that just set the night up. It was we had two at the bar, and then I walked her home, kissed her goodnight, and then so now I'm alone in January. It's freezing out, and I'm not properly dressed. I'm just in like a fucking leather jacket, and I'm like, like my two voices on my head, and I was like, one was like, okay, you drank, but go home. It's okay. Go to your family, and we'll just work through this. The other voice was like, nah, let's make it fucking crazy. Let's go. Like it's game time.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to that voice, and
Well, it's easier to
and
listen to that voice when you're already
yeah,
had that drink. Yeah.
I ended up going to a couple bars, tried to get into the Mercury Lounge because, I was like, I'll try my way in, and I don't have a ticket. Bouncers didn't like that, and they were like, get the fuck out of here, you don't have a ticket. So now I'm like 7, 8 drinks deep, freezing winter.
You by
I
yourself?
stumble, yeah.
Yeah.
I stumble into this bar called the Library. It's right across from the Merc. And I order a double jack, and I'm just like swimming in it. Like I'm just like watching it and take a couple steps, and there's a mirror across from the bar. So I'm just like staring at myself. I'm like, yeah, I could go tonight. Like those thoughts came back, and I was like, I could die, and but as soon as that happened, well, something else happened. Like as soon as I said yes to like suicide, it was like, well, everything I saw my life kind of flash almost. It was like I could see the future of what that would look like if I did go through with it. And it scared the shit out of me.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm giving up so much, and this is not the way I want to go out. And I looked at the drink. I said, you put me here. I was like, you put me here.
Yeah, you nightmare.
Yeah. And I didn't even finish it. I tipped the bartender and I walked out, and I haven't had a drink since.
Wow. So as you were telling that story, man, like so many emotions were coming up because I know that feeling so well. Like I had that exact feeling so many times where I would catch myself shit faced and then like in a mirror. I'm not saying that you were shit faced, but I'm saying that like that self reflection, like there is something very beautifully poetic about when you're hammered and you have those very clairvoyant, like clarity moments of just like self reflection. Like and a mirror is really good tool for that. And I found myself in so many different scenarios, like when I was really drunk and just looking at myself in the mirror, like, oh my, like catching like a weird reflection or something at a bar or whatever, or party or something, and being like, you are such a loser. You're such a low life. Like, look how much more wasted you are than everyone else, stuff like that. But that's very beautiful, man, that you saw yourself, the reflection, you saw the drink, you saw it swimming around, you saw that like, it was like you're looking down at your drink and you're like, this is encapsulates every bad feeling that I have in my life. And it's all because of this one substance that we all adhere to as like the social lubricant, the party drug, everything that everyone revolves, like so much socializing revolves around it. So that's very brave and beautifully said, man, because that's not many people would come to that self actualization at such a young age. I mean, you were what, 24 at that time?
Yeah. 24.
So, okay. So you said I'm done. You said this is enough, man. So tell me what happens next, man.
So I took the train home, and I went up to my parents when I just started crying. I said, "This, I can't do this anymore." Um, and that Tuesday I went to my first AA meeting. I was for a year. I was going to outpatient rehab twice a month or twice a week. AA, same thing, and but in the shorter scheme of things, it was I think the hardest part about early sobriety is, all these feelings that the drink was numbing hit you like a fucking train.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh my God, like I got to deal with this and that and this. And but it wasn't an excuse to drink. It was, okay, now I have to sit and deal with them.
That's the hardest. That is one of the hardest parts, I'd say, of early sobriety. And I'm glad you mentioned early sobriety because I know that's a topic that we were talking. We wanted to bring up. And yeah, man, like this is something I always tell people when I'm, especially in my little mentoring program that I've created with people. It's I tell them all the time, like that just because you put the drink down, man, it like that doesn't mean your problems are just gonna all of a sudden miraculously vanish. That on that next Monday morning, whenever you chose to stop drinking. That's why it's so hard to get sober because now you have to deal with your issues and your problems and all those things that you were avoiding and the alcohol was actually encouraging you to avoid for so long are just going to be right there in your face in the morning. And then that's where the real work begins. But at the same time, like that work that when you're finding your true identity, like who you are without alcohol, it's really difficult, but it's like the most meaningful work you can do. Like those first 3 months of your sobriety, I almost feel like are the most profound and and just they're just like it's just a beautiful moment of that recovery stage, because if you can get through those first 3 months, dude, it's like now. So once you get past those first 90 days, it honestly becomes like this honeymoon phase of sobriety, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you start feeling better, you start looking better, you start having more confidence because you don't need the alcohol as like that crutch, like you were saying earlier, anymore. And now you can just embrace life like how it was truly intended to be. So let's talk about your early sobriety, man. Like let's talk about some of the uh the the happy moments and maybe some of the more challenging ones.
Yeah. So happiness, happiness came back, and I started to feel like me again. I started to
How
get
long would
back
you
into
say? How long would you say you started to feel like more you again? How long do you think it took you?
4 months,
Hmm.
1 month. Yeah.
I mean, that's a substantial amount of time, right? So anyone watching, listening right now, that's it. Just so you know, be fair, forewarned that it does suck in the beginning, but it's so beautiful after once you get through that initial 90 days. So 4 months, man. So tell me about that. So you started feeling better.
Yeah. I felt better. I started like unlocking things that I used to not be able to do sober. So like being at bars, because I still go out with my friends. For in the beginning, I would leave immediately, or I would have freakouts and cravings, and just like I'm like, I can't do this. But then eventually, I started to be able to go to bars and be around alcohol and not feel discouraged and not feel like I had to leave. Performing, I'm a singer, so performing sober was a huge thing. Because that's the best high I'd ever gotten, was just being on stage in front of a crowd, and it's so much better when you're sober. Talking to girls, flirting with girls at bars or wherever, was always a bit of a struggle for me. Um, but now I do it sober, and so it was like a lot of unlocking my true potential, self confidence, and the anxious thoughts, and OCD all kind of dissipated. So I guess I kind of did like a 360, or like a 180, just like my life just turned around in all the best ways,
Hmm.
and now I'm truly happy. And life is not easy though. Life is hard, and I've had some sad things happen. My grandma passed away in
Oh my God, I'm sorry,
January,
man.
and she was like my girl.
Hmm.
Like her and I were tight. And
It's hard going through grief and loss
yeah,
when you especially when you're new to being sober. It's really difficult.
yeah,
Like if I didn't have my wife when my father passed away, I was only like, I don't know, 10 months after uh, sober when my father passed away. So it was like a huge blow. And I remember thinking like, oh God, like I would I was still so new and sick that like the alcohol really didn't cross my mind, but I was like, it would help a lot right now.
yeah,
It was like the first thing I thought of when he passed. I was like, oh God, you know, I'm so sorry that you lost your grandma and you were close.
yeah,
It's just a part that I kind of was thinking about too, is when you're talking was the it's so strange that as men, when we're trying to meet people and flirt and things like that, how like that urge to always have a drink in your hand and always have
yeah,
a buzz, and you're thinking deep down, like, because that's social anxiety, and you're like, it's hard talking to a girl like this cold, going up to them and cold and like talking, right? So that's why the alcohol is such a huge factor with like dating and going out and things, because it's like you have all that pent up, it's really
yeah,
difficult to talk to her. But when you're sober and you've been sober for a while, like 4 months and stuff, like when you're going out and you're forcing yourself into those situations, like there's so much growth that happens, don't you think? You
yes,
have to do it
yes,
sober. Yeah,
yeah,
it's actually easier because you can remember the things that if you're like trying to like, okay, just say this and this, like talk about them, and like I would think that I was being this really eloquent, funny, enthusiastic dude when I would be like hitting on girls or whatever, but it was very, very far from the truth. I'm sure I looked like a
yeah.
sloppy, sweaty mess, and there was a reason why I wasn't leaving a lot of bars with a lot of girls at
Yeah.
it's sometimes, because it'd be like, okay, well, clearly like they didn't want anything to do with that. Like who
Yeah.
would, right? And then you get all mad like her loss. You know?
Yeah,
It's like, no,
whatever,
man, like
yeah.
you're a drunken sloppy mess, dude. Like that's probably why. It's trust me, she did not lose. So I get that. It's really hard, but it's also really cool that you started trying that. So like what are some tips, dude? Like what are some, I mean, I'm a married man, so I don't know, but you tell me
Yeah,
like
yeah.
what's the tip to going out and trying to meet a girl sober? I'm sure people would love to know that one.
Listen, smile, be open with like your body language and listen,
Yeah.
it's, I've been on dates recently and I feel like when you hear somebody, it's just like, you're just like spitting back and forth. When you're listening, you're
Mm,
actually taking in what they're saying with importance and constructing a response that is like they can relate to,
yeah.
so like, I would say listen and just, smile and don't be afraid because the worst thing she could say is no.
Is no, and then yeah,
Yeah.
leaves you alone.
Yeah.
And yeah, and we build it up so much in our heads that like, oh, it's gonna be like soul crushing. And no, it's not, man. Like just move on. If it doesn't, if the vibe isn't right, just move on. So yeah, I hear you on that one. From my younger days, and then you think like in the listening part, that's a hard part to do when you're wasted, right? Because it's so loud, is everyone talking over each other, and then you get the alcohol just makes you an incoherent, like like sloppy dribble. At least that
Yeah.
was it was like for me at least a lot of the times. Okay, so now you're at this point. So like you've been sober now for a while. Like what are some of the things that you're finding out about yourself now that maybe you weren't intending to find?
I have learned that the person that I am and I always was always good enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm,
I just
that's
needed
good.
to learn that.
Mm-hmm.
Because not that I changed completely, but, you know, I would mask a lot of things, as the party guy or as this, and it it took away from who I truly was. So, I was getting back into animal studying and, my music has become so much better and I'm honing my craft in being me.
Mm.
And
Authentically you, yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
And I love it.
Mm,
I mean, so if I could give a piece of advice to anybody who's listening, it's just be you, you know,
mhm.
just be you. Don't be a
And
dick, but
and
just
love
be you.
yourself a little bit more, I feel like there's a
Exactly.
there's a huge there's a really high correlation between people who overindulge with alcohol or whatever drug that you can associate yourself with and in insecurity and lack of self-love. And that's something that needs to, be talked about, addressed, especially for men. I feel like it's really difficult to kind of grasp the idea of insecurity and what's your place in the world with, there's so much like fighting against us. I feel like sometimes it's like hard to kind of come to grips with, okay, like how do I navigate this world without alcohol? How do I be like a social person without alcohol? And it's not easy, but it's also very, very rewarding once you start figuring out those little pieces of like the inner shadow work that they call it, when you're trying to, build this person, this true, authentic, kind, loving person. It's there's a lot of work and growth that goes into it, but it's like some of the most meaningful, profound, type of work you can actually do in your life.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's work. It's not easy. It's not just gonna come to you like that,
Mhm.
but it's worth it. It's rewarding every day.
It's rewarding every day. So now tell me about once you have a presence now on Instagram and you have a page and you're really going, full tilt with this. So tell me a little bit about that. What came to that, what made that decision real for you to start your page and your channel and everything?
So it actually came from a couple rehab and AA meetings.
Mhm.
Some of the older people would come up to me at the end and say, I wish I did what you did at 24 instead of wasting 30, 40, 50 years of my life, like suffering. I was like, I could help the next generation, Gen Z or whoever realize that they don't need to go through life suffering and then get clean, but that it's attainable at a young age. Like you can do this at a young age. It's not, it's not like a rite of passage of suffering. It's like, if you feel like something's not working for you, you can nip it in the bud now. You don't have to go and keep pushing. So I came out with that July of 2024. And it has been a beautiful experience. I met so many people like yourself, and um, I'm actually working on a book right now. I wrote the book. It's about my story, and I'm editing it with my dad.
Wow, that's really
Um,
cool, man. What's that? Yeah, you have a title for it yet?
it's called Redemption.
Nice.
Yeah. And it's very raw and honest. It's got a lot of stuff in there that is not for the faint of heart, but that's what addiction is. It's raw
Mm-hmm.
and it's brutal and it's dark.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I actually found a poem that I
Yeah.
wrote when I was drunk in my
Can we hear
journal.
it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was in Italy, and this is 2023. So it starts, says, fuck, fuck, fuck. I'm so tortured with the fork in my brain that drives me insane and tells me which way to go. Medicate the self, only to die by the self.
You wrote that when you were drunk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't miss writing like that.
No.
I don't miss the misery, the pain, the depression, and the cycle of it too. It's like my life has changed so much, and through Stay Clean, through podcasts, through just talking to people that I know. People have reached out to me, and I don't give medical advice or anything because I'm not a doctor, but um, I always want to provide a place where somebody can talk and get something off their chest.
Mm-hmm.
Which is actually, I mentioned to you before earlier that this was a really good week. I'm going back to school in the fall to become a mental health counselor, like slash social worker, depending on where I go.
That's awesome. I'm actually doing the same thing too. I'm
Really?
going back to to get my graduate degree and my master's degree in master's of social work, so MSW.
Hell yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
cool,
yeah.
man.
Yeah. So hopefully that helps the podcast. Hopefully it helps my life, my career, all that
Exactly,
good
man.
stuff, right? So
Yeah.
so I know a little bit more about the inner workings of what makes why do we do the things we do, and like what are the reasons, like the biological reasons, what are the psychological reasons, like all those things are so important to know when you're in recovery, because it's like it only helps you kind of be have that self-actualization of being, oh, this is like why I'm doing this, this is why people do this, and being able to help. It'll just make everything a little easier for when I'm explaining something to someone
Yeah.
from like a clinical point of view, which is cool.
Yeah.
So congrats on that. That's awesome, dude.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So, is there anything else that you want to talk about before we jump off? Any like last closing remarks?
Um, I just be you. I think that's my
Just be you.
honestly, yeah. And
Yeah.
enjoy life. Life is short, so just enjoy and laugh and have as much fun as you can.
Yeah. And wouldn't you
Mhm.
want to enjoy your life with a clear, sober mind? Whereas all of those memories, like, yeah, there's some fun ones in there when I was drinking, but at the same time, like, there was way more sad, really depressing, emotionally degrading moments as well. And I would say
Exactly.
that the fun times far were less than the horrible times that we've gone through. So kudos to you, man, for finally realizing it, coming to the actualization of being, this is not serving me anymore. I need to grow up. I need to move on, and that's really cool of you to learn that at a much younger age than I was. I didn't realize that for another 10 more years after you. So good for you, buddy, for realizing that.
Thank
And
you,
good for
man.
you, for everybody, for getting this far and watching this episode, and really in all the comments and the questions that I've been getting. It's just been phenomenal. I mean, I've really enjoyed this podcast so very much. And it's these kind of conversations that keep me sober. Like you and I, like people come on, they think like, oh, like this, we get to do this, have this conversation. But every single conversation that I have with everybody on this channel is also keeping me sober. So thank you, Mario, for keeping me sober today, buddy. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing the perspective of a younger person going through such a difficult challenge like overcoming alcohol disorder. So congrats, Mario. I look forward to seeing that book come out.
Yes.
When it does, I'll make sure to get a copy of it and read it,
Yeah.
because I'm excited to read what you have to say.
Yeah, man.
And congratulations.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and be on the lookout for many, many more episodes coming soon. Take care, everybody.